World Tourism Day every September 27th raises awareness of the need for accessible tourism all over the planet. Thanks for joining me on the International News Desk on Echo Television International. Here are news stories at this hour. The war in Ukraine enters a phase as annexation votes comes to an end. Curfew imposed in Vietnam, evacuations ahead of Typhoon Noru. Hurricane Ian Category 3 storm makes landfall in Cuba. United Nations envoy says Haiti facing humanitarian catastrophe, and Australia Prime Minister vows to seek anti-corruption watchdog. Invasion votes in 4 occupied areas of Ukraine will come to a close late Tuesday, paving the way for Moscow to officially seize more region and increase its military operation possibly within days. The votes on whether to join Russia are being held in Kherson, Luhansk, Donetsk, and Zaporizhia, 4 regions that make up 15% of Ukraine's landmass. While Kyiv and its Western allies discard the sharp polls, Russian media are reporting high turnouts. According to the Kremlin-backed RIA Novosti outlet in rebel-held Luhansk, the referendum rate was above 90% by early Tuesday. Moscow claims voting is voluntary and the polls are fair, but the results will certainly favor annexation. When Russia held a poll in Crimea after grabbing the peninsula in 2014, it announced that 97% of people had voted to join Russia. But even traditional Russian allies such as Serbia and Kazakhstan have said they will not recognize the newest annexation votes. The 5-day exercise has been affected by irregularities, including reports of Russian forces taking ballot boxes door-to-door and forcing Ukrainians into voting. Kyiv has cautioned that Ukrainians who support the votes and takeovers will face treason charges and no less than 5 years jail term. However, presidential advisor Mikhailo Modolika said Ukrainians who were forced to vote will not be punished. On weather, Vietnam has forced a curfew and ordered hundreds of thousands of people to leave their homes as a strong typhoon that left not more than 8 dead in the Philippines is set to hit Vietnam's central region. Residents living close to the coast where Typhoon Noru is anticipated to make landfall early on Wednesday had been ordered to take shelter, reports said on Tuesday. Schools have been closed and public events cancelled. Around 270,000 military forces have been positioned on standby, the government said in a statement. A curfew will begin starting Tuesday evening in Da Nang and Quang Nam provinces. It forbids people from going out except those on official duty, according to reports. Flights at 5 regional airports have been cancelled and train service halted until the typhoon passes. The weather agency said Noru, which is anticipated early on Wednesday, had recorded nearly sustained winds of 180 km per hour, 111 mph. Authorities have advised 400,000 people to leave their homes, including in the popular tourist city of Hoi An. Vietnam's 3rd biggest city in Da Nang, all shops and hotels were closed while residents have been barred from going out on the streets from late Tuesday. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization said it was already working with local authorities to design mitigation of the typhoon's effect on agricultural communities by distributing cash and other assistance. According to data from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center located in Hawaii, Super Typhoon Noru will be only the 6th main typhoon to hit Vietnam since 1945. And still in weather, the country's Institute of Meteorology says Hurricane Ian has made landfall in western Cuba as Category 3 storm. The National Hurricane Center, NHC, said the hurricane is packing maximum sustained winds of 185 km per hour. Around 50,000 people in western Cuba's Pinar del Rio province were evacuated to safer locations, 6,000 of them to state-run shelters and the rest to the homes of relatives and friends, local authorities said. Officials rushed in emergency personnel taking measures to protect crops in Cuba's main tobacco-growing region. Fishermen in the capital, Havana, took their boats out of the water along the famous Malecon Seaside Boulevard, and city workers were clearing storm drains ahead of the expected rain. After passing over Cuba, Ian was forecast to reinforce more over warm Gulf of Mexico waters before getting to the United States of Florida as early as Wednesday as a Category 4 storm with top winds of 225 kilometers per hour. The city of Tampa in Florida was under a hurricane surveillance, and Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency in all 67 counties. Ian will bring heavy rain, strong winds, flash flooding, storm surge, along with isolated tornado activity along Florida's Gulf Coast, DeSantis said at a press conference in Tallahassee on Monday as he cautioned people to get ready for power cuts. On Monday, the Biden administration announced a public health emergency for the state and said it was working with local officials to provide support. Both Cuba and the United States have in recent years seen wetter, windier, and more extreme hurricanes, which some experts characterize to climate change. There is indication that climate change is triggering storms to travel more slowly, dumping more water in one place. The Caribbean and parts of eastern Canada are still counting the cost of powerful Hurricane Fiona, which tore through last week, claiming numerous lives. Officials have warned of new levels of desperation in Haiti as several crises have been compounded by recent protests, the looting of millions of dollars in humanitarian service, and an ongoing siege of a significant fuel terminal. Helen Lalime on Monday, speaking to the United Nations Security Council UNSC, Haiti's envoy warned that an economic crisis, a gang crisis, and a political crisis have converged into a humanitarian catastrophe. The condition has worsened amidst widespread looting and protests that followed Prime Minister Ariel Henry's declaration of fuel price surge on September 11th. Approximately 4.9 million Haitians have already in a state of humanitarian need ahead of the newest turmoil, Lalime told the council. She said the Veru fuel terminal in Port-au-Prince has been in a stage of siege for over a week, closed off by criminal gangs who have dug ditches and blocked roads with fuel containers around the site. She added that fuel shortages have hobbled the country's ability to function and have forced some hospitals to shut. Haitian Foreign Minister Jean-Victor Jesus told the council that shortages have also forced the biggest industrial park in Haiti, Caracol, to stop functioning, which could result to the loss of 12,000 jobs. He said private companies are likely to leave the Caribbean nation, and it was unclear if schools will be open by the already postponed date of October 3rd. Meanwhile, the WFP Deputy Executive Director Valerie Guneri said food insecurity was anticipated to spike in Haiti this year, exceeding the record high of 4.5 million people estimated to face crisis or worse levels of acute food insecurity, including 1.3 million people in emergency. In recent years, recurrent natural disasters have caused havoc in Haiti's economy, which has battled since a devastating 2010 earthquake that killed as many as 220,000 people in the country of 11 million. The assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July of 2021 further cast the country into uncertainty. Amidst the insecurity, powerful gangs have jockeyed for influence, often leading to violence, battles for control. For months, gangs have blocked roads from the capital to the country's rural provinces, impeding government services and complicating efforts by humanitarian groups to distribute aid. During the meeting on Monday, Foreign Minister Janius called on robust support from the international community for the Haitian police against armed gangs. On business and economy, Australia has revealed strategies for an independent corruption watchdog after years of debate over the need for larger oversight of the country's politics. On Thursday, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Attorney General Mark Dreyfus said in a statement the planned National Anti-Corruption Commission will have broad jurisdiction to investigate grave corruption in the public sector and will deliver on a pre-election pledge to restore trust and integrity to federal politics. According to the statement, the proposed watchdog will work independently from the government, be able to make findings of fact, including findings of corruption, and have the power to prefer findings to federal police or the Director of Public Prosecutions. Legislation to establish the watchdog, which will be established with initial funding of 262 million Australian dollars, that's $169.8 million, over 4 years, is projected to be introduced in Parliament on Wednesday. The centre-left Labour Party, which took power in May, had sworn that the establishment of an independent watchdog will be of importance if it got into government. The previous Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, opposed the establishment of a federal watchdog demonstrated on bodies at the state level, describing New South Wales Anti-Corruption Agency as a kangaroo court over its use of public hearings that harm the reputations of people ultimately not found to be corrupt. The projected National Commission will be able to hold public hearings in exceptional circumstances and where it is in the public interest when its finding will be subject to judicial appraisal, the government statement said. More stories after Russia detains diplomat in Vladivostok, Japan lodged protests. Japan has accused Russia of unreasonable behavior and threatened equivalent steps after the FSB, the Russian Federal Security Agencies, detained a diplomat in the eastern part city of Vladivostok and accused him of being a spy. Tatsunori Motoki, who worked at the Japanese Consulate General in the city, was set free after a few hours and declared persona non grata, reports said, citing an unnamed government source. It said Motoki had been ordered to leave Russia within 48 hours. Chief Cabinet Secretary Harukazuka Motsoni in Tokyo described Motoki's detention as unacceptable and accused the FSB of using a coercive approach towards the diplomat. Russia's security agency announced it had detained a Japanese consul in Vladivostok on Monday for suspected spying and ordered him to leave the country. The diplomat had also been asking for information about the impact of Western sanctions on the Eastern Pomorsky region, the FSB added, according to the agencies. Russia's foreign ministry said in a statement the diplomat had been ordered to leave the country within 48 hours and the FSB had lodged a complaint with Japan. Local media released footage allegedly showing Motoki receiving documents at what appears to be a restaurant and him admitting to the accusations during FSB questioning. Japan's embassy in Russia before now lodged a protest about the detention to Moscow's foreign ministry, saying it was a clear violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations and the order to leave the country was unreasonable, according to Kyoto. Russia considers Japan to be a hostile country, a description it shares with all European Union countries, the United States and allies, including the United Kingdom and Australia. Moscow and Tokyo have traded tit-for-tat sanctions since February 24th when Russia invaded Ukraine. Tokyo's relations with Moscow were complex even before the war. The two sides are involved in a disagreement over islands Russia calls the Kurils and Japan the Northern Territories, which has stopped them from signing a post-war peace treaty. Talking politics, the church related to Abe's killing, Japan's political troubles. Shinzo Abe was not his assassin's desired aim. Investigators say Tetsuya Yamagami, who fatally shot Japan's longest-serving prime minister on July 8th, had originally wanted to murder the leader of the Unification Church, a South Korean religious sect that the 41-year-old blames for his family's financial ruin, but the COVID-19 pandemic got in the way. Hak Jahan-moon, who has led the church since the 2012 death of its founder, her husband Sung Myung-moon, had stopped coming to Japan following pandemic-related border closures. The blatant killing in the city of Nara as Abe was giving a campaign speech shocked Japan, a nation where political violence and gun crimes are exceedingly rare. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida quickly declared that he will hold a state funeral for Abe, while the Japanese public handed his ruling Liberal Democratic Party LDP a sweeping victory in an upper house election held just days after the assassination. But the grief hastily gave way to anger amidst rising media scrutiny of the church's extensive ties with Abe and the LDP and alleged abuses, including claims of forced donations. Meanwhile, Kishida has seen his approval rating drop from 63% at the time of Abe's assassination to about 29% in mid-September, raising questions over the Prime Minister's political future. In Africa, Kenya attorney in ICC case connected to the new president found dead. A police officer said Tuesday that Kenyan authorities have launched an investigation into the death of a lawyer accused of bribing and intimidating witnesses in the International Criminal Court ICC prosecution of President William Ruto. Paul Gicheru was accused by ICC prosecutors of planning a blatant and prejudicial witness-altering scheme that made it impossible to pursue investigations against Mr. Ruto for his alleged role in Kenya's 2007 to 2008 post-election violence. The lawyer, who was in his 50s, was found dead in his sleep on Monday night at his home in Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Mr. Gicheru's trial started in February in The Hague. Prosecutors have suspected that the lawyer bribed witnesses with up to 1 million Kenyan shillings, about 8,300 euros, and threatened others, including one at gunpoint. Gicheru denied the charges, pleading not guilty before the ICC based in The Hague. The information what we have from his family is that he had a meal and then went to bed but did not wake up. A police officer who requested anonymity said, according to reports. An investigation is underway to determine the cause of his death, the officer said, adding that Gicheru's son was taken to the hospital after complaining of stomach pains after sharing the same meal. Now, opposition wins legislative vote in Sao Tome. According to preliminary data released today by the National Electoral Commission (CAN), Independent Democratic Action (ADI) opposition, led by former Prime Minister Patrice Trovoada, won Sunday's legislative elections in Sao Tome and Principe with a total of 36,549 votes. The provisional figures for the legislative elections were presented tonight at the CAN headquarters in the capital, over 29 hours after the polls ended, a delay that provoked protests from IDA militants who burned tires near the CAN offices, which were surrounded by the military. CAN President George Jose Carlos Barreros declined to present the distribution of seats by party as usual, referring to the Constitutional Court for this task, justifying that the parties have presented discrepancies in their own projections. After Sunday's elections, our technical team proceeded to project the results that were obtained by the candidates that ran in the elections, said the CAN president. The Movement for the Liberation of Sao Tome and Principe Social Democratic Party, MLSTP/PSD of Prime Minister Jorge Jesus, was the second most voted party with 25,531 votes according to CAN data. The Basta movement, created 3 months before the elections, received 6,874 votes, while the Movement of Independent Citizens Socialist Party (MCI), which ran in this election in coalition with the National Unity Party (PUN), and which had 2 deputies in the previous legislature, received 5,120 votes. Finally, Putin Ally finally admits to finding Wagner Group. Evgeny Prigozhin, a businessman close to Russian President Vladimir Putin, admitted on Monday that in 2014 he created the Wagner Group, a private military company which is forbidden by law in Russia and is also present in the military campaign in Ukraine. However, in his words, he soon understood that the half of the Cossacks and paramilitaries were fraudsters and that half of those who collected the money hired volunteers who were sent to certain death without equipment. He said, and I quote, "I went to one of the polygons and took care of it myself. I cleaned all weapons, looked at the issue of bulletproof vests and found specialists who assisted me." At that moment, on 1st May 2014, the group of patriots was born, which later received the name Wagner Group, Prigozhin noted. He stressed that it was only thanks to the courage of the Wagner Group members that the liberation of Lugansk airport and several other territories in eastern Ukraine was possible. Reports have also exposed that Wagner mercenaries are presently fighting on the side of the Russian army forces in the war in Ukraine. Wagner Group members, Prigozhin said, are heroes who defended the Syrian people and other peoples of Arab countries, underprivileged Africans and Latin Americans, and became one of the pillars of our homeland. Until recently, the businessman sued journalists and anyone who connected him to the Wagner Group. Prigozhin is nicknamed Putin's chef because of his closeness to the Russian president and his restaurant business. The businessman is said to have won state contracts worth at least 2.5 billion euros, including one to deliver food to the Russian army, according to an investigation by Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny in 2017. The United States cautioned this oligarch for his role in the campaign of intrusion and disinformation, especially against Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election, which was won by Republican Donald Trump. To refresh our memories, earlier, the war in Ukraine enters a phase as annexation votes comes to an end. Curfew imposed in Vietnam, evacuations ahead of Typhoon Noru. Hurricane Ian Category 3 storm makes landfall in Cuba. United Nations envoy says Haiti facing humanitarian catastrophe, and Australian Prime Minister vows to seek anti-corruption watchdog. And thank you for staying with us. From all of us at Equa Television, have a good evening.